You might not get the new Jag next year, but you know, how many Jags can your garage really hold? So we do need to figure out at one point what it actually means when we talk about working class, the poor, working class, middle class, corporate class, and upper class. Because in terms of what people think they are, well, a lot of people think they're middle class. Most of the work, by the way, in terms of social scientists that has been done in terms of class or any other explanation of why society is the way it is, has been done by white, this is salient if it's done in the U.S., upper middle class and upper class men. A very particular position in society. Not an invalid one. They do represent a part of society. However, it can't be the only one. Because having grown up, having the privileges of this position, not having to deal, for example, with racism, with sexism, with poverty, means that there are a lot of things that you just don't see and might not see as interesting in your research. To a large degree, they get privileged by religion. They resemble their deity. They're empowered by the foundation texts. It's all about being masculine, being male, and especially being white male. In my Intro to Gender Studies, we took a look at the fundamentals, texts that were written at the beginning of the 20th century that are the foundation of the fundamentalists today. And then we looked also at text that was written by a contemporary version of that in 2001, I think, about that time, about 100 years later, 90 years later. And they are absolutely convinced that white males are the direct descendant of Adam, and therefore they are just absolutely the best people in the world. It takes a very strange knowledge of history, of course, to do this, and you know, you have to sort of meander through the Queen of England and things like that. But belief is different than knowledge. They are empowered by sex. They're socialized to see themselves with full potentiality for human status, especially if they're surrounded by generic he's and by generic mankind. They get to imagine themselves doing all sorts of things. By gender, they're permitted more variety in the life course and freedom of movement, both physical and social. By race, they can be imagined as normal, unhyphenated, and then, of course, the invisibility of class membership adds the foundation. You have a lot of people who come out of this class who will tell you with a straight face, I made myself. Nobody helped me. Well, actually, if you come out of an upper middle class, upper class family, you got a lot of help. And you got very, very few barriers put in your way. You might also have gotten help if you're somebody else, but you still had more barriers in front of you. The race thing, I think, is the most interesting because we don't necessarily mark when somebody is white. Phoebe Moore Campbell is one of my favorite authors. She is an African-American woman. She writes wonderful books. And she started one book, Brothers and Sisters, with a description of a bank, because the main character was worked in this bank. So she starts this description, she starts talking about tellers and the manager and customers. And it took her until the last paragraph on the second page to refer to somebody as black. Then when you read back from these two pages, you knew everybody else was white because they were not marked. So you even have a black author not marking white, but then marking somebody who is not. Marking as being black, as being Latino, and so on, so on. It is a privilege not to be marked, not to be hyphenated, to be sort of normal, but please do put this in quotation marks. So, just as a reminder, when we read, when we talk, we need to know who is doing the writing, who is doing the talking, because they do have a certain point of view. But then we also have the beginnings of the social justice resistance arguments. And we've already traced those beginnings, the possibility of those beginnings in the Cartesian thought, and it could have been an integral part of it, but there was, of course, this fear that something could be lost, and Titan, so to this moment, has been your most powerful text on that. And one of the things that becomes clear when you look at all this through a social justice lens, and especially in terms of class, when we talk about power, we do do not always talk about the same thing. Different powers come in different levels of society. Do you have any power at tech?
Like any authority or...
What does power mean? You've read Max Weber. What does power mean? In its very basic definition, power can be said to be able to make other people do what you want them to do. Sometimes against their own will, against their own better interests.
Well, we have like student power. What are the numbers?
There's so many you can take over.
No, I'm saying without the students, your salary wouldn't be there. It is.
Don't at the moment. Don't tell this to any faculty member, because if we're in a good mood, we're just been giggling on the floor. And most of our salary actually comes from the state, so it's basically we're paying ourselves with our taxes. But yeah, I mean, do you have to be here?
No.
Do you have to be here?
It's a choice to be here.
Yeah. Does the university need for you to be here?
Some degree? Well, yeah, it depends on what state.
Yeah, because otherwise the state wouldn't be paying for universal.
We get much more money from grants than we get from the state.
Because of all the research done.
Universities traditionally are communities of scholars. Scholars come together, live together in the very old forms of it, to do their research, to exchange ideas, to work with each other and off each other as well. And then young people are invited to be almost as apprentices to become the next generation of scholars or scientists. In that sense, we don't need students at all. Don't make faces like this at me. You have no clue how faculty is looking forward to next week. It's not that we don't have work to do. We have tons of work to do, but the going sentiment right now is we're going to finally have time to work. This is so cool, no classes. In the traditional sense, the university doesn't need students. Sciences, scholarship needs the next generation. So we need to have scientists in training. But for us to do what we're doing right now, for example, for my work, I don't need any students. But I don't need cheap labor in labs of blowing things up and things like that. But when we see the university as not just engaging in scholarship and science, but also in the training of the next generation, and we want to broaden that training into the next generation, we're going to give access to it not just to people who want to become scientists, but others who just want the foundation in these sciences. Then that part needs the students. And so, you might be tolerated. But, however, you do have power. At the end of the semester, I'm going to ask you to fill out a student evaluation form. At that point, you can get even. You have power. Because my chair reads those, my dean, well, here's the vice president for academic affairs reads those, these become part of my tenure package. These will follow me throughout until I have tenure, and then throughout until I make full. So there is power in that. Do I have power over you?
Oh, yeah.
This is an elective. I don't have to be here. Now, of course, since this is my field, I determine how this is going to be taught, what you should do to understand the material. So once you accept being enrolled in this class, yeah, you're sort of making a deal. Yeah, that's actually what you're going to do. Can I kick you out?
Yes.
I can kick you out of class right now. I've done this once. I've learned that actually from one of my graduate professors at the University of Kansas, who